My name is William Lee. I teach Latin, or I've been teaching Latin in San Antonio for 24 years. And so I'm really happy to be part of the Hands Up team this year. It's been super exciting, doing something new. And I've known Will for a long time. And so hopefully, you guys are experienced Superani users, or perhaps you guys are new to Superani. And I mean, book three is going to be new for everybody, right? And so we're all kind of exploring this together. And so if you want to follow along with the presentation, there's a QR code that you can use, as well as a tiny URL, tinyurl.com/book three pacing, capitalization doesn't matter. If you need to, let me kind of move that a little bit over. If you need to follow along on your computer or your phone, if you need to get in touch with me, I have my Twitter, formerly known as Twitter, current X handle up there, as well as my email address. We also have some more upcoming webinars as well, including the one that's going to be taking place this Sunday at 10 a.m. Central. And so you can use that QR code to register as well. All right. So, yay, Subarani Book 3. As you can see, Book 3 is divided into, it has 8 chapters, and it's divided into different themes like Amor, Natura, Imago, Migratio, all of those things. And there's a lot of authentic literature for you to choose from that fits into those themes. And so you can really tailor your courses and your programs however you want based on those themes. And at this point, I kind of wanted to do a little quick survey. And so if you want to go to menti.com, and I'll type that in the chat as well, so that way you can use your computer and type in 1894-5184 as a code. And there's some questions that I'm asking y'all. So the first is, I've been teaching Latin for... Oh, yes, yes, I see there's way too long. So I'm going to do a new share so that people can kind of see what's happening. All right. So quite a few people in the 10 to 15 year range. So it's almost like about third-ish. So I'm gonna give about 30 more seconds for you to respond. Okay. Awesome. So it looks like we have lots of experienced teachers. I'm surprised no one's a newbie. That's awesome. Okay. So then, kind of wanted to take a temperature of the room. With one word, describe how your school year is going so far. Yes, I can. Yes. Oh, yes. So, way too hot, fine, busy, fast, quickly, exciting, energy, excellent, pleasantly, hectic. About 30 more seconds. Low key, too fast. I think we can all think about the phrase tempus fugit, right? And then add time flies when you're having fun. So hopefully that's the case for those of you who are thinking it's going way too quickly and that it's not stress. Okay, strong. Okay, nice. So what are some of the words that come to your mind about Superani Book 3? Just either if you haven't had time to explore, look at the screen, kind of look at the 8 images up there. Just kind of how do you feel so far already looking at those? And for those of you who do have access to Book 3, type in your feelings. Okay. Excited, thematic, compelling, engaging, organized. Okay, a little apprehensive, which is understandable. Themes, authentic, bridge. Okay. Diverse. All right. Those are all very good things to say. So as you know, with book 3, it's one of the words that came up. It's beautiful. And so as is the case with all of the Superani books, it's beautiful. And so you have an opening image, and as they say, picture is worth 1,000 words. And so just from one image, you can ask the students to do a lot with just one image, right? You can project this onto the screen and ask them, what are some of the things you see? If you want to review some vocab about body parts, fine. If you want them to like write a Latin sentence on, hey, what do you see? They can do that as well. But as typical with the books, it's just very colorful, very engaging, and the content is well thought out. And so you have some culture stuff embedded throughout the different chapters. You have translations of some of the Latin passages for the students to read that fits the theme. And then you have the Latin passages themselves with some notes and vocabulary and some comprehension questions that the students and the teachers can work together and use throughout the textbook. And there are also little tools like chapter vocab that you can download, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And again, just kind of giving you the layout of the text. And this is hopefully a larger picture of the text. I know sometimes at these presentations, you're just staring at the screen. I know it probably is still a little bit small for you to see, but that is okay. But again, you can kind of see the layout. You have the Latin, you have the vocabulary on its side as the students read, and then there's some notes to help them understand things. And again, you can engage the culture and the mythology, different aspects of studying literature with paintings and pictures and culture information that you can tie in to the teaching. And so it's a lot of fun that, again, going back, it's engaging, it's well thought out. And so you can use this book 3 to do a lot of things teaching authentic Latin literature. And again, we still have the culture information. It's there's just a whole ton of them, not just stuff necessarily in the passages themselves, but also, like textual transmission, graffiti, nature and things. And so lots of different things. And of course, um, as typical of a reading course, there are language notes. And again, they have seen samples of these in context before they're being formally introduced. So the students have opportunities to kind of explore and see how things are used in context before they're fully explained. And so this is an example of language notes for chapter 33, which is on present subjunctive. So they've seen it a couple times if they have read some of the passages, and now this is the full um, explanation and paradigm for them to work on. And so again, I mentioned that there are lots of resources available that are downloadable and interactive. And so as PDFs at the chapter level, there are general teaching notes for all the chapters. There are passage by passage vocab, as well as chapter mini dictionaries. At the passage level, there's specific teaching notes to that passage. And so chapter 33 has passages A, B, C, D, all the way to, I think, W. There are lots of passages. And so each of those passages has individual teaching notes that you can get, as well as vocabulary words. And as Word documents, we're actively working on tier readings. That's a plan. So I believe there's some tiered reading materials that are already up for chapter 33, and all the other chapters are forthcoming. Of course, if you're familiar with Superani, there are activities and games. And for chapter 33, right now, there are some sorting activities for you to practice with your students once they have talked about the language usage. So for example, present subjunctive. And so you are going to be able to do a lot of things with the students, whether doing them as class activities or individual reinforcements. And so it is, I mean, there's just a wealth of tools. And as Will pointed it out, that there are teaching notes for Latin passages for right now, chapter 33 and 34. And as we continue to produce those, they'll be put on the web. And so really the big question today is pacing, right? So we have this brand new book and huh, um, are y'all still able to hear me okay? Because my microphone just kind of cut out just a little bit. Okay, it's just weird. I just changed the sound all of a sudden. It's like, oh, weird. So the focus of this webinar, the topic really is on pacing, but with something as beautiful as this book and with something that has so many options and authentic passages, sometimes it's hard to figure out how to pace the course. And so since I'm talking to a lot of experienced teachers, I don't need to really talk much about backward design. And so again, you know what your school calendar looks like. These are the calendars for this year from the 3 school districts I worked at. And we have Alamo Heights, which is on a block schedule, 90 minutes every other day, whereas Northside and Northeast IC, my previous 2 districts, they're 50-minute periods every day. And so, you want to set a place where, okay, so I want to be in chapter 37 by the end of first semester or 36, right? So set a realistic expectation, go through the textbook, and then see how many periods you have, and then work backwards. And again, I cannot emphasize enough that you want to decide what you want to do with the book. The book is not written in a way that for you to read every single passage. It's organized in themes so you can actually skip around if you want to. Let's just say that, okay, so I did chapter 33, which is Amor. I don't want to do chapter 34 Natura just yet. I want to save that for something else. There's another thing like imago or migratio, especially given the current geopolitical climate. If we want to talk about refugees and immigration, immigratio as a focal point to kind of draw the students in, that certainly is a great way to use this book. You don't have to follow from 33 to 34 to 30. If you just want to, okay, let's explore migratio. Great, awesome, let's do it. And as you can see, the number of lines per chapter or words per chapter, and these are available as resources. And I'll show you where to find that document online a little bit later. So do remind me if I forget. Um, but if you look, these are great resources for you to use for planning as well. And I'm going to talk about how you can use Book 3 as part of the new AP Latin curriculum, which requires you to do a lot of choice readings that has a certain number of vocab words that you need to be exposed to, or just a certain number of words of selections. And so these documents will help you in planning that course as well. And so again, you don't have to read all the selections, right? Choose the ones that you want your students to read. Choose the one that you think that they're going to enjoy. You can go with themes, you can go with grammatical topics, whatever it is you want. And again, at the very minimum, you do want to expose them to as much authentic Latin literature as possible, and while working on language acquisition, and see just how Latin works, right? How the actual language works in works of literature. I mean, it's super impressive to read these literary pieces as literary pieces as opposed to I'm going to translate into English because again, when you are actively translating, sometimes, as they say, things would get lost in translation. So do this with me. This is your opportunity to move about. I'm all about movement. Do this with me. No, you don't have to read everything. No. Pick and choose. Pick and choose. And so here, there's some suggestions for pacing. If you access this PowerPoint, this Google slide later, and click on that link, and I'm also going to put the link in the chat right now as well. It's a link to a Dropbox that has, I provided for you some sample um, templates for lesson planning that looks like the one that I put up there. Let me hit enter, make sure I have. Okay, so there it is. So in the chat. Um, and I'll show you how to use the template in just a minute. But the first suggestion that I have as far as pacing is concerned, the pro will be there's more time to deal with all the fun storylines from books 1 and 2. I mean, they're just gripping. And so Donna says there's something, no slight change. Huh. Is that true for everybody? Okay, so the slide, is it not changing? You're still on the lines and words slide. Huh, weird. Okay, I will stop share and do a new share.
Mm, that's great.
Is that better?
Yeah, yeah, spot on, Will. Great.
Okay, that's so bizarre. Not sure what happened. Okay, so do you see this new slide now? Okay, I need to go back one. So the X, do y'all see the X? Okay, we're good. Okay. Okay. Sorry for those of you who are wondering why the heck we're doing the X. That's why. So again, the whole X is about not reading everything. But again, my first suggestion would be to finish book two during the first semester of Latin three. So basically you have 5 semesters to go through books one and two, so 32 chapters, which is very manageable. And again, that really gives you a lot of opportunities to explore the extra culture, the mythology, and the history, in addition to really get the students engaged in the storyline. I mean, they want to find out about Sabina and Alexander. They want to find out about, oh my God, about Katya and Boohoo, right? Like if you want them to just shed tears, I mean, tears will be shed, right? And so these are things that you can do to really get them into the storyline and get excited about Latin. And so you can then start um, second semester of Latin 3 with book 3. And again, pick and choose, go through a few chapters. And then if you are in the system like I've been teaching in, where you start Latin in ninth grade and then go, if they do 4 years, then AP is the 12th grade Latin. Then you can finish book 3 and use part of book 3 as well as the additional required readings that AP has set up for Pliny and Virgil. Suggestion number two, which is a cleaner way of doing things, would be to finish chapters 1 to 16, which is book one in Latin 1, which means that the focal point really needs to be on the storyline. Read the story so that they have exposure to the vocabulary and the language acquisition and the language structures. Some of the you may have to rely on homework assignments and outside of class time for some of the culture stuff, like the mythology, the history, but it's still doable. And then finish book two, chapter 32 in Latin 2. So it's a clean break, and then you work on chapter 33 through 40 in book 3 if you like. And again, not all of it, just pick and choose. Um, and then the third suggestion that I have is just, again, continue to Latin 4 AP. So very similar to the first suggestion. But, again, if you finish 1 and 2, you can spend all of Latin 3 on lots of literature and then bleed into Latin 4 as well. So the question is doing after Latin 2 or during. So it could be during as well if you have the time. Okay. And so I'm going to stop share for a moment. And so you can kind of see a better picture of the lesson plan of this sample. And so here's the sample lesson plan that I have. Let me move some things around because I know you probably see some boxes and whatnot. Okay. And so this is if you want to do lesson plan for your classes. So objective, procedures, and here in Texas, we're dictated by what's called TEKS, which is basically the learning objectives set up by the state for world languages, especially for Latin, or specifically the Latin ones. And so that's what those numbers are. And so I have all these student-centered activities versus teacher-centered activities and assessments. And the templates in the Dropbox will allow you to edit. And then once you have finished editing the document, you can then restrict it, and then you can just do the clicking for the boxes and then print it as a PDF. And so if I were on the 90-minute block, that's what I had in mind. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday this week, that's what they will be doing. Okay. So kind of taking the temperature of the room, like Give me a thumbs up sign if you saw that okay. Excellent. Digital thumbs up sign is great. Physical thumbs up sign is great as well. Awesome. And again, and I did mention about clicking on those boxes. Do you guys know how to do that in Word? Thumbs up, thumbs down. Okay. If not, then you can stay at the end and I can definitely show you how to do that. Okay, so yeah, it's not really difficult. And so definitely, I believe you can figure it out. Awesome. Okay, so let me go back. And so those are just, again, the suggested pacing that I would say to follow. And I think, again, with book three, it gives you a lot of leeway to work on things. And so I personally would try to probably follow suggestion one. Give me more time to finish all the engaging storylines in books one and two before starting book three. And I think I would choose to start with Amor. That's a great way. That's a great place to start. And then just again pick some of the chapters, go through the chapters, and see. And again, going back to reading and teaching authentic Latin literature. Um, with all language courses, like when they get to authentic Latin literature, it's more than just about translation. You have to use a variety of strategies and tools to help them understand how the language is working. And so you need to rely on lots of vocabulary activities, summarizing activities, discussion activities, ways to analyze the text without making it um, too burdensome for people. Because again, who want to go to a class where they're just staring at Latin and translate and read for 90 minutes? I don't know. Especially with students nowadays, it just seems like their attention span is not quite as long. And so you definitely have to change things up a little bit, right? And so I try to do lots of things where they can show me that they understood what the Latin is saying. And so with chapter 33, they get introduced to Marshall, right? And again, now you can go through all the different chapters if you want to focus on one author. If you just want to find all the Marshall poems, go through the document, find all the Marshall poems and read all of them if you want, right? Because Marshall is fun. And some of the activities that I try to do is, again, I want them to illustrate that they understood, that they're understanding Latin. And so this is an activity where Marshall's epigrams are super short. And so they're supposed to read it and then show me by illustration that they understood the epigram. And so as you can see in the drawing, this is an epigram addressed to Aemilianus, right? You'll always be poor if you're poor. And wealth is given to nobody, right? Now, except to the wealthy. Again, you can ask them, hey, have things changed, right? And that will get a lively discussion for sure. And then they can also make movies. They know more about technology, y'all, and the little pinkies than we do. And so give them that freedom of choice. And again, that's one of the beauties of Super Ronnie is that there are lots of choices. There are lots of things for you to do these fun activities with the students. And so this is one. I'm going to pause it for a moment. Can y'all hear the music as well? Okay, awesome. I'm going to continue to play.
You are beautiful in every single way.
So Anastasia definitely, had her sister dress up, younger sister, and actually, wonderful students. And did they show me they understood the Latin? Absolutely, right? I don't have to ask them to translate, but from what they did, they showed me they understood. And again, let me pause that to go to the next slide. Oh, going back. So some of the other things you can do, difficult Faculus with the picture, right? And that's one of the most interesting martial epigrams, right? You can certainly bring in discussions about, hmm, what's the relationship like between Marshall and the person that he's talking to? Who do you think that is, right? And then you can point out some of the things about the masculine endings and so who do you think it is? And so lots of opportunities for very fruitful discussion. And then you can ask them, okay, so now that you have read an epigram, you can write your own either in Latin or in English, right? As long as you get the flavor of it. And so this is aimed at a math teacher, I think. And so I don't know, it could have been me, who knows? Um, but uh, but yeah, if you read, it's like, okay, they get what an epigram is. So book three with authentic literature offers you lots of opportunities to explore a lot of these things. And again, you can with Caesar passages, right? You can ask them to illustrate and label, which are these skills that they have to justify the answers, right? And so lots of things, and it's not just, I mean, as you can see, right, like the fire, the people in Wicker Man, right? That's always the fun passage from Caesar Book 6. Um, you know, two different people did completely different things with the same assignment, same activity in class. And this, of course, is the Fama passage. And so always fun to do. So again, lots of things you can do with the passages. You can do Kahoot, you can do Gimkit, you can do translation races and things like that for you to kind of work through. And so here is another video thing. Very much so, right? Very, very bold. But again, that's something for them to do to show me they understood things, as opposed to an activity that you can do in class, where this is why it's called dictatio currens. It's called running dictation for those of you who have been to modern languages and world language conferences. It's a very popular activity where they're paired up in class. One person is the writer, the other person's runner. They go outside, find something, and then come back and dictate it to the writer to write it down, and then they switch roles and then they go back. And so these are like sentence strips are taped onto the wall that they have to do. But you can adapt this for, of course, a literature course, right? You can give them a passage as or from book three, right? Okay, so you guys have book three. I have some questions, literary analysis questions posted outside. So one person will go find a question, come back, dictate it to the partner. Then they look through the passage, try to find the answer, and once they're done, they go outside again to get the next question. But again, like this is where I'm gonna ask y'all to like stretch a little bit. I know y'all been sitting for a while, stretch, don't want you to yawn, get too bored, move about. Um, because you want to change things up, right? And so you want to get them running, you want to get them moving, lots of things, lots of opportunities, but fit in these analysis activities. So ask them to explore the genre, who's the speaker of lines 1 through 3? What do you think the significance of this word is? What is this Latin phrase doing? As opposed to, okay, y'all, go and pair up with your dictionaries, your paper, your notebook paper, your pencils, your pens, start working on translating lines, blah, 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 blah. So again, it's all about reading. And so that's what the reading course is about. And that's what Subrani is about, right? The storyline. And then now in book three, we're using the authentic literature pieces for them to really look at the Latin, how the language works, and why did Virgil use this word? Why did Pliny use this word? Why is this happening? And let me do that. Okay. And of course, you can also, like I mentioned earlier, you can use book three with AP, a specific curriculum, or IB, or certainly just a literature class. And so, and again, this is a document of resource that's online. I'll show you where to get it. And as you can see, like IB, again, not an expert on IB, but from what I understand, the 2024 exam is the first assessment of the new IB curriculum where it's more on language acquisition in addition to some of the set readings that they have. And so, but again, you can use the selections in book three to kind of serve as bridges into getting used to an author's style. And so these are things that you can do. So I'm going to kind of stop share for a moment. I know I've been talking a lot and see if anyone has any questions. So Pete says you're using Amores, Lucretius, and Seneca in your IB course, so the Amor Natura and Imperium lessons look perfect. Yeah, absolutely. Any other? And again, please feel free to unmute yourselves. If you have any questions, or type in the chat. So I mentioned earlier about being able to get some of these resources. And so if you, let me share my screen now. So if you go to the Subrani page, again, you have book 1, 2, and 3. And so if you click on the book 3 icon, that's information on book 3. Oh, I see some chats. Yes. So Elizabeth's question is, do you have similar lesson plans for books 1 and 2? So the templates are all in the folder. Like there's one for Latin 1, there's one for Latin 2 and 3. And so you can use the same template and kind of follow the same format and create those lesson plans. And Jen says her students are super excited by poetry like never been before. Excellent. All right. And I'm hoping I got your name right, Khan. Is that right? I'm so sorry if I didn't get that name correct. If I didn't say your name correctly. But you're saying that you're loving book 3 so far. See an area in the book though. Is there a place where you can submit notes? And so that's a will question. And so I think you can
Yeah, I think just if you spot anything that isn't right, just send it to contact at hands up. I'll just put the there you go. Just send it to us there. And whether that's in the is always worse if it's in the print edition, but if it's in the digital, we can usually put that straight within sort of 24 hours. But yeah, let us know anything that isn't right or anything you'd like to see.
So Eric, there's a question about pacing where to include book 3, mapped out any of the Latin 2, Latin 3 class in book 2 and book 3 progression to reading comprehension proficiency level. As in the actful reading proficiency performance, right? That's what you're talking about with intermediate high and all this. And yes. And so I would say that book 3 is definitely because it's a lot of authentic text. It's more intermediate high and advanced low. In fact, some of the passages like Lucretius and Tacitus and Ammianus Marcellinus can be advanced mid to advanced high. And so we're continue to work on things and we haven't talked about mapping it to those specific terms. But certainly that's something that we can discuss and think about. But I would say that um, by end of book 2, they really should be about intermediate, mid to high, I would say. Because again, it's a lot of um, continuous storylines, complex sentence structures, um, and with classical languages, all the actual standards and designations are a little bit different. And so like when you compare to modern languages, anytime where there's when there's a tense shift, that immediately puts it into intermediate. And so, yeah. All right. And so if you scroll down, you can kind of find the information about ordering and the pricing. But this is what I'm talking about. There is a book 3 document PDF that has the content, introduction, number of lines, number of words, authors. And so, and again, chapter by chapter. And so this will be a great tool for you to use as far as planning is concerned and going backwards. And again, the information about some of the overlapping aspects of book 3 and the AP curriculum. And it's the revised AP curriculum that's going to be implemented in 2025 to 2026. So that's really exciting. And this is a sample chapter that you can kind of look at. So that's where you can find all of that information right there. And then if you go to the management piece of it, if you click on book 3, and again, if you're familiar with the digital content, if you click on the chapter, you have all these resources. So when I say activities and games, the sorting words, that's where we are. So again, the focus on chapter 33 language notes is the present indicative versus it's the present subjunctive. And so this is the first exercise that they do. And then you can go to the teacher resource, again, chapter level resource versus the passage level resource. And again, for 33 and 34, they're up, but all the other ones will be up on the website as soon as they are ready. So that's really it. Any
Great,
other?
William, thanks. Thanks. Have we got questions for William or for me or for others about, how to use the course sort of day to day? Super useful what you've done there, William, on sort of planning. And we want to talk about, how much of it you want to do in a year, whether you do all of it or just a bit of it, about jumping around. What have you got sort of practical questions you have if before you start using it? I know maybe some of you have already started using it. I'll say a little about sort of book 3 versus books 1 and 2. When we worked on books 1 and 2, we could write the stories to fit the grammar, but with this obviously it's a bit different. What have we got? A question here, Jen. Our previous Zoom before the book, there was talk of a workbook. Will that be coming out anytime soon? Yeah, let's I don't know, I know our pictures are so tiny you can't probably see, but we did for the demonstration a couple of years ago when we were looking at different options for laying things out. We did create a little workbook there. So we were talking about this just the other day, Jen, about possibly coming up with something, like this that essentially um, takes gives you the kind of Latin passage and the vocab and notes and so on, and then some space for writing. Well, I don't think it's going to come out soon, as in before Christmas, because we need to get the UK edition done first. But I would have thought something like that, a little workbook like that, is quite easy. And we were thinking about maybe doing them at chapter level, print on demand. So I wouldn't be surprised if sometime this academic year they come along. Pete, what have you got here? Question: how have you incorporated the grammar of the units you don't cover into the units that you do?
So
Um,
that's a great question, Pete.
mm,
And I think a lot of times we're really fixated on some of the specific language topics, and you're thinking that, okay, so it's mentioned in this chapter, and that's where I'm going to introduce it. Whereas, again, that's the beauty of book 3 with a lot of these selections is that, so for example, chapter 34, the language notes focus on perfect subjunctive forms. You don't have to teach it in 34 if you want to teach it in 33. There are examples throughout the different selections or a later chapter that do have selections of some of these examples of grammar. And these are things that, you can do. So if there is a specific grammar topic that's not covered in that chapter that if you like to introduce, then certainly by all means. So I
um,
hope that answered your question.
can
And
I
Will?
just say a little bit about that, William, as well? Let me just share, if I can, my screen. I don't know that we have this online yet. Are you seeing the screen there with the word explorer on it? Or you see, yeah, you are. Okay. So we did something like this for books 1 and 2. But this will allow you, for example, let's say you're not doing the chapter where we teach perfect subjunctive. You can, in the bottom left down here, just hit perfect subjunctive and hit go, and then it will populate all the examples of things that we think of perfect subjunctive in the top right. So you can see various passages where they may come up, and you can do the same for all sorts of things. Let's say you want to find gerunds, so you select that bottom left, and then top right it will bring up all the gerunds in the course. So that's one way, but that, Donna, you're saying that's not in book three. Well, this is a little bit of software that we used and we created as we wrote book three. Right? We will put it online in the book three areas. Just I suspect it's not there yet. Can you remind us how to find that for books one and two? Yeah, sure. So if you just go to your Lander page and go to teacher resources, I think, and down here, there you go, and that's the one for books one and two. Okay, we haven't integrated the one for book three with the ones for books one and two because, well, partly we just haven't, and partly because they operate slightly differently. So that's one way of getting around, anyway, in book three, the fact that you may not do a particular chapter or section of it. The other thing I would say is, I was saying earlier, books one and two, if we were teaching the imperfect or the imperfect subjunctive, we wrote loads of them into the passages. Virgil and Ovid and Tacitus were not so accommodating. And, when we selected passages on the topic of herbs or migratio, they didn't necessarily find themselves having more gerunds in them than any other section. So it's there isn't the same density of particular linguistic topic in a particular chapter in book three as there is in one and two, because you can't construct it that way. So in that sense, grammatically, it probably doesn't matter that much if you jump around. The index, there's a grammar index at the back of the book, and you can always go and find where the language topic is and just teach it from, possibly a different chapter. I think at this level, I wouldn't worry too much about doing that myself. Cool. Right, I'll stop sharing. Sorry, William.
No, that's okay. Any other questions? Awesome. So we really would like to hear from you as we kind of wrap up today's webinar. And so you can use the QR code on the left-hand side or the link to kind of give us some feedback about the webinar, as well as provide ideas for that you want us to do for future webinars if you want. So use that. And for me personally, I always want to grow as a presenter, as a professional. And so any personal feedback that you can provide for me, that will be much appreciated as well. And as I've said, there are lots of resources and information, and I'll kind of, again, keep that up there for a few more seconds. But there are lots of information and resources that Hands Up provides for Superani, and a lot of it is found online. And so if you'd like to find out more, again, email contacts at Hands Up Education, or you can join the Superani Facebook group, which is very active. And one of the best things about Superani users is the generosity and also the ingenuity and how people just are so willing to share materials. And so you can certainly take a peek at what people have generated and join that Facebook group and see. And don't forget that our next webinar will be this Sunday, 10 a.m. Central, and the focus will be on vocabulary trainer, on tracking, how you can use it to leverage against your students, like as formative assessment tools and all that stuff, that fun stuff that Will's going to share with you. So hopefully we'll see lots of you on Sunday morning.